Hello, everyone. Very good evening. Can someone please confirm if I am audible?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, thanks. Uh, all right. So first of all, apologies for yesterday. So we were having some operational issues due to which we had to reschedule this session to today. So we are having this session today instead of yesterday. Uh, okay. All right. So since the quiz has recently happened on this Sunday, we would love to hear your feedback. What your feedback is for the quiz exam that you have just given this Sunday. So any one of you wants to give any feedback?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Hello.
Chandrasekhar.
Yeah, sir, it was balanced and it was mainly testing the concepts. I like the way questions were asked.
Okay, so if I'll ask
It
you that,
was
how do you rate the difficulty of that question paper on the scale of?
okay. It was balanced. I will say that on the scale of 10, it would be 8 out of 10.
Okay, so 8 out of 10, it was difficult.
That I can say. But if you are prepared, I mean, your concepts are clear, you can easily go through it.
Okay, okay, great. Okay, I'm able to see one response from Bhavya, 3.5 on a 5-point scale. Anyone else who wants to give any feedback for the quiz exam?
Yeah, kind of, for me it was kind of a little eye opener in the sense one need to be really careful in understanding what the question is asking. And so couple of mistakes due to that, but then otherwise paper because of all the live sessions, so I think I did I fared a little well compared to what I was thinking.
Okay, okay, all right. So it was easy enough if the theoretical aspects were understood.
I can't say it was easy, but yes, everything what was asked was discussed.
Okay,
Either in lectures or in definitely in live session.
okay. All right, great. So yeah, I guess a few people felt that it was a little bit on the difficult side, but yeah, many feel that it was a balanced paper. All right, great. So we wish you all the best for the results as well. Hopefully, the results will be out in a week or so. Uh, we'll see. Okay, so right, that's it. Is there anyone else who wants to give any feedback? Anyone else? Okay, no one. All right. To share solution code for cafe management problem. Okay. Okay. Yeah, Bimlesh. So yeah, we'll share that solution code, but okay, all right. We'll figure out that how shall we share it. Yes, Bhavya.
Sir, maybe we can have like an extra session or two where we can just do the practice programming assignments instead of just sharing them on Discourse or something. Maybe we can sit and actually do them on a session or something, because that way we get more opportunities to understand better.
Got it.
Like the one we did for week 4.
Okay, the password meter app. All right.
Yes,
So I do not feel that that session needs to be a 2 hour long session, as I feel it would be get over by
and
one
that is
hour.
why we can schedule maybe say 40 minute or an hour session on other than the regular sessions.
Okay. Okay. All right. So today's yeah. So I would like to have it as early as possible. I don't want to delay it anymore there. So definitely, I would not like to do it in the today's session as well, as there is something else that we have planned for today. So we'll check if we can have it on Friday. Like might be a Oh, correct day to have that.
In fact, adding a additional session on each Friday and doing such, covering such aspects like coding aspects will help a lot.
I think we are trying to make each of the session hands-on practice based. So basically, we are trying to write some code or create an application in each of the sessions that we are having. We would be happy to take any doubts if you have from the activity or practice based questions for whatever week that you have been studying. But yeah, our focus will remain on the practical oriented side of it. So yeah, if you feel that of course means there is a requirement or there is a strong need for scheduling more sessions, we would definitely do it. So yeah, we are planning to have it this Friday. So I'm not certain about the timings right now, but I'll get back to you on the discourse, like what time is going to be suitable, as we also need to look at the schedule of other courses as well, so that it doesn't coincide with other courses like sessions. So yeah, I'll check that, and yeah, I'll definitely schedule that for this Friday. So the agenda for that session is going to be to discuss weeks 1 and 2 JavaScript programming assignments. That is it. Is that all?
Sorry, come again.
So the agenda for that session is going to be the weeks 1 and 2 JavaScript programming assignments, right?
Yes.
Okay. So there were just 2 problems, right? Week 1, there was 1 problem. Week 2, there was 1 problem. All right. I hope we should be able to manage both of them in 1 hour. Okay. All right. So a 1 hour slot is fine as well. Okay. All right. So we'll see that what time slot we can come up with. So if we talk about today's session, so as you all know that week 5 has already introduced the usage of Fetch API, and how Fetch API works. This basically largely depends on the concept of promises. And what we are going to do in today's session is to basically spend some time understanding what promises are, as we feel that it is worth to spend some time understanding that concept if we want to use fetch calls or I should say that if we want to use fetch calls efficiently, if we are able to understand that how it is working and how the behavior can be actually modified or can be customized. So this is what we want to achieve with the help of promises. But before we basically start with the promises, there is one more thing that I want to emphasize on, is basically the callbacks. So we'll start with callbacks today, and after that we'll start discussing about promises. Of course, we will definitely do some hands-on coding as well for both of those things, so that it becomes clear to each one of you that how those things are working. Okay, so I would be sharing my screen in a minute, but before I do that, I just want to know that what do you feel what callbacks are? Anyone would want to answer that what callbacks are?
Sorry, sir.
What are callback functions?
Sir, functions that are passed to another function to be returned later on.
Okay, all right,
Passed as an
correct.
argument.
I mean, callback functions, you can call the function and let it complete, and meanwhile continue doing some other work. And whenever that function completes its work, it gives a kind of trigger so that further action can be taken.
Okay. Okay. All right. I'll just quickly share my screen and I'll show you a very simple example. But okay. So probably I can use Replit for today's session, since we are going to work with JavaScript all along.
And like earlier Chandrasekhar had asked, and taking an extra session for GitHub will also help.
Okay, so what all things do you want for a Git session? Sorry, I'm basically not able to understand things. What concepts you want to be covered in that session?
Sir, regarding
How to
version
push-
management.
Yeah, Chandrasekhar.
Sorry,
Yes, sir.
regarding?
Version management, taking one example, that is how the previous code we are going to modify and then there are some forks. We manage those forks over there. That if with some examples, if it is possible to explain, that would be better. Like we are taking a previous app and we are building a new app on the top of that. Can we do that? Taking a Git session where first version is there. So we are going for a new version by building something on top of that. Like this, if it is possible to demonstrate, that would be great.
Okay. Okay.
Just to add to that, how to push things from
your local
computer
storage to
the yes,
cloud,
and
and
then
again,
how to bring that from the GitHub to local storage.
yeah, the concept of pull and fork, all this.
Sorry, the concept of pull. Okay, pull. Okay, all right.
Pull and fork. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So let's see that when can we have that session. Okay. All right. Yeah. Thanks. So we'll discuss and we'll get back to you about that. Okay. So what I want to write here is I want to just write a simple example that can understand or that can help us understanding what callbacks are. So let's say what I do is I create a function. Let's say test1, and what this function does is it just does this. It says that test1 call. That's it. Now what will I do is I'll make one more function. Let's say function test2, and what this is accepting is okay, let's say one value called a, and let's say one callback function that is we'll understand that how this is going to work. And what will I say is that if the value of a is greater than 7, then I am going to call this function, right? Else I'll do something else. Let's say I'll write callback not invoked. Now can someone help me that how basically can I invoke this function, a function named test2? I want to pass a callback named test1, and this a is going to be any random value, any number. So can someone tell me that how shall I write a call to this test2 function here at line number 11?
Test2 3 comma name of the previous function test1.
Okay, so if I write test1 here, would it work?
Console.log if you want to see the output. Okay, already we are writing console.log.
Yes.
I think that should work.
Okay, so if I click on run, what I'm going to get is that callback not invoked. Why? Because we passed a value that was not greater than 7. So that's why it is going, the control is going into the else part of the condition, and it is executing whatever is written. Now let's say if I type 8 here, then what is going to happen? This condition is going to become true, and it is going to call the function which it received as a callback. And what does it do? It simply invokes that function, that is test1 call. This is the message that we are getting from this test1 function. Right. So this is a simple behavior that how callbacks work. You pass a function to some another function as a parameter, and you basically invoke that function in that function definition to perform some. Now, my question to all of you is that what is the advantage of using a callback?
So
what
you
is
can
that?
perform nested operations.
Nested operations like?
Means I can call another function to perform some specified task. Like here we specified a condition over here. If the condition is satisfied, then we are executing the test1. So like this, if there are two functions, I'm taking the reference of that is recently we covered in lecture 5. Week 5 lectures. We generally call and we are having resolve condition, and we are having, there are two callbacks. One is resolve and another is reject. So we are able to handle two situations with the help of these callbacks.
Okay. Let's say what I'm going to do here is I'm going to make a very simple change. I just want to discuss what you have said. and let's say I'll just keep it here. Right, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to comment this part. Now, if I call this or if I run this program, what do you think? What is going to happen? So this func is going to become this time test one. And of course, I need to create a variable here. So let's say it is going to be it. Now, are we able to simulate whatever we were doing before?
Every time we need to specify the value of a here dedicatedly in this case.
Okay, it's okay. I have created it this time. Next time I can just change it.
We are getting almost same behavior here.
Yeah. So means, yeah, that's just an argument to what you have said. That if callbacks can be used in that way, then why can't we use it this way? This is also, all of the operations are happening synchronously here. There is no concept of asynchronous that we have bring up here as of now. Everything is happening synchronously. So is there anything else that callback provides us?
As you said, the asynchronous functionality.
I don't want to bring asynchronous right now.
We are passing parameters in test 2, but here we have to write it explicitly.
Sorry, can you just repeat it once?
Here the condition we are writing explicitly.
Okay.
After initializing the variable, but there we can pass it as a parameter. In the earlier case.
Okay, let's say if I do something like this, function test3, and I do something like this, and I call this function test3, and I pass this value of k here. So a here. Now, if I click on this, and it is still giving me test1 call. I didn't make use of any callback here, but still I'm able to get the same result.
So there will be the situation we need to wait for one function to generate the output, and depending upon that, I need to perform some task. As we are going here synchronously, not necessarily we are needed to always go synchronously.
Okay. Let's discuss that example. Let's say there are some set of operations that should only be invoked when a specific task has already finished its execution, right?
Yeah.
So what's the issue in that? That can be easily taken care of using async and await.
Using async and await.
Yes.
Yeah.
You can restrict the execution of few lines of code until a specific set of block or set of code has finished its execution. You can restrict the execution of the further lines.
So what I can say with async, we can have await in another async function.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like let's not try to bring in the concept of async and await right now. Okay. Let's try to understand it in the synchronous way only.
Yes, sir.
Otherwise, it is going to become a little bit difficult. Okay, so let me try to explain you that what advantages does callback provides. So right now, if you would see that there is a function test3, what it is accepting is it is accepting a, and it checks that whether a is basically greater than 7, then it is going to invoke this test1 function, else it is going to do something else. So in that function, what is the only dependency for this function is basically this value of a, right? We can change this value, or we can directly pass this value to be 10, 11, or whenever we are making a call to this function, we can change that value. But what we cannot change is we cannot change the function which is going to be invoked. Now, this function has become specific. Why I'm saying this this function has become specific is because what you can change is only the value of a, only this parameter that is going to be passed as an argument. You cannot change, or you cannot invoke a different function in place of test1 here. Let's say you have 10 things to do, you have 10 tasks to do. This function will be able to help you complete one task. And let's say there are 9 other tasks that are very similar. But what you need to do is you just need to call a different function in place. That's it. That's how the 10 tasks differ that are given to you. In that case, do you think that this approach is going to help you? Because what you would be required to do here is you would be required to write 9 more such definitions. Like you would have to write, just copy this and you will be required to write repetitive code here. Am I making sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, kind of a general case rather than specific.
Exactly. So we are trying to, make our code more generalized, more generic. Now just return back to this definition and think about it for a moment. What we were doing here. Let me just put them on the same screen. Yeah. So here, what we were passing was, we were just passing a value and we were checking that if that value was greater than 7, then we are going to call a specific function that is test1. But now think about this test2 function. What we are passing is, we are passing that value, okay, that is fine. But along with that, what we are passing is, we are also saying that if that value ends up being more than 7, then you have to call the function that I am passing to you as argument. Right? Here, I can also specify what I want to call in return if the condition becomes satisfied. So let's come back to the same example. Let's say you are given 10 tasks and just the value is different, but let's say the function is going to be different in each of the case. Now, what you can do is you can use the same function for all of those 10 tasks, because what you know is, that which function is to be invoked when the condition is satisfied. You just have to change what? You just have to change the parameter that will be passed to the function. The function definition will remain same.
So this
make
is
sense?
this is
Yes,
more
sir.
generalized.
Correct.
We can use it. We can use it again and again as per our use.
Yeah, correct. So what we are basically trying to solve here is we are trying to avoid the repetitive of code. We are not trying to repeat the code again and again that we have already written. We are trying to reuse the code. Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay, all right. So this was a simple thing about callbacks, that what are they and why do we usually need them, or what are their advantages. So that is fine. I'm just going to comment them, or maybe I can just paste them in the chat. Okay, all right. Now I'll just delete it. Now, what we are going to do is we are going to start with the promises. As many of you were pointing out towards async and await, so I'm assuming that you would have already gone through the concept of promises if you have reached there. So I just want to listen from you that what do you feel what promises are, or what a promise can be called? In layman terms, in simple languages.
So shall I?
Yeah, sure.
So actually we are requesting for some URL or some API, and initially it is in a state called as pending. Okay, in general, if you want to say there is some task that I want to get to done. Okay, I'm not sure about that it is going to get complete or not. So that is going to have 3 states, specifically initial state, and I will be getting 2 outcomes, whether successful or unsuccessful or rejected. So promise is something like that, which if it is successful, it gives you that kind of status state, that is what it is successful, and if it is rejected, and that is what we are getting in some JSON format.
Okay, correct. So if we'll go to the MDN documentation and we'll read the definition of a promise. So let's see what this is. So what they say is that a promise is basically a proxy for a value that is not necessarily known when this promise is created. So yeah, whatever you said is absolutely correct, that we basically assumes it to be a proxy the value of which is not known when we are actually creating. And this value, of course, it will come up later with whatever actions we want to perform. We'll go into those things, but this is a very basic idea, and you can even relate it to the real life as well. Let's say your friend or you makes a promise, then until and unless that promise is not fulfilled, you cannot say that whether it is going to be fulfilled or it is not. Right? So there will be some kind of state in between where that promise is going to stay until the time it gets fulfilled or it gets rejected. Right? So we are going to discuss those. The simplest way, through which you can basically create promises is using the promise constructor. So you can directly write new promise. We'll discuss that what all things it accepts, but before that, let us first try to discuss that what examples we are going to use in the session today in order to understand that how promises work. So we are going to consider a case where we are going to collect the marks of a particular student in some subjects, let's say in 3 or 4 subjects, and what we are going to do is we are going to check that whether that student is going to get first division or something else. So we are going to put some criteria, like if that student gets so and so marks in so and so subject, then the student will be able to get first division, else the student will not be. So this is what we are basically going to do here, that the result is going to come and we are just checking, or we are just waiting that if the student is going to get the first division or not. So what I'm going to do here is I'm simply going to create a object here, let's say marks. And in this marks, I'm going to put marks of few subjects, let's say for English. Let's say 89. For maths, it is going to be, let's say 72. Okay. I'll change it to math, or probably mathematics. Okay. What else can we have? Let's say we can have physics, where the student can score 80, and then let's say we have computer, where the student is going to score, say 68. Okay. So we are going to put some criteria. Let's see that how that is going to work. But yeah, we will move forward with that. Now, as I said, that promise can easily be created using the promise constructor. What we need to write is we just need to use this new keyword and write promise. And what this promise basically accepts is a function that accepts 2 callbacks. One callback is for the condition when the promise is going to be resolved. So as we have already discussed, that either a promise will be fulfilled or it will be rejected. That means it won't be fulfilled. We will be talking about the states of promises as well, but right now we are just talking about the outcomes. How a promise can basically end. It can end if it is fulfilled, or it can end if it is rejected. That means something is not fulfilled. Okay. So what we are going to do is we are going to create a function here that is going to accept 2 callbacks. 2 callbacks. One is again in case the promise fulfills. In other case, the promise gets rejected. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a function which is going to accept 2 things: resolve and reject. Okay. So this is my what my function is. Now here we have to define the criteria that in what case this promise is going to be fulfilled or it is not going to be rejected. So let's say what we say is that if let's say the marks in English, let's say they are greater than 80, and marks in physics, if they are also greater than 80, and marks in let's say computer, if they are greater than 7. Okay, in that case, what is going to happen is you are going to call this resolve function. Right, resolve means this is the callback that will be invoked in case this promise is going to be full. Right, that means the condition, whatever you specified, is going to become true. In the case of else, else means that the student is not able to manage to get into the first division. So what we are going to say is we are going to say that it is reject. We will simply say that reject, and reject is basically a callback that this function has received here on the top. Sorry. Let me see if I can write it in some other way, or maybe I can change the layout. Is this properly visible now?
Yes, I
Yes,
think
sir.
the previous one was better.
Sorry.
Yes, sir. Previous was
Yeah,
better.
visible.
Okay, previous one was okay. This is what you are saying.
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right, no issues. So see, what we have done is we have tried to create a promise. As we discussed, that promise is accepting a function that accepts two callbacks, resolve and reject. We have already discussed that what's the significance of these two. And inside this function definition, we are going to decide that when to call resolve and when to call reject. Okay, and let's say let's assign this promise to some variable, say a. So if I write console.log a, so what is the result that you expect?
We call reject function.
Sorry.
In this currently it will call reject function.
In the current case, okay, yeah, it is going to be rejected. So what will I do is I will simply make some changes here. The marks in English should be greater than 80. This is the case. Marks in physics should be greater than 80. So I'll just make it 82 and I'll make it 75. Okay. Yeah, so I have just made it to a condition where this promise should be resolved because all of the conditions here would be satisfied. We have used AND operator. Now, in that case, the promise is going to be resolved since we are going to call this resolve function. Now, if I'm trying to print the value of a here, what do you think? What will happen? Or what will come up on the screen?
It will be promise, and that is not having any definition, so that should be undefined.
Okay, are you sure?
It should be undefined, sir, because there is no definition for resolve and reject given.
Correct. Okay. So what we are going to see is, yeah, we are going to see promise and the value is undefined. Why undefined? Because we have not specified that what this resolve is going to accept and what is reject is going to accept. So precisely what we can do is we can pass some value here inside the resolve function that we can make use of while handling this promise, while handling the fulfillment or while handling the rejection of this promise that we'll also see going forward. But right now, what we are able to see is that if we try to print this a, we are not going to get any value as it is. What we are going to get is a promise. Okay, this is what we are going to get. Now, how we can handle the rejection and the fulfillment of the promise. That means if a condition, a particular condition has been satisfied, what steps needs to be taken care, after that. This is what we are going to define now. So as you can see that what I have done is I have assigned this promise created in a variable called a. Right. So this a is going to basically refer to this promise that we have just created. And since we are saying that we want to define the further steps that the program should take when the promise is going to be rejected or fulfilled, in that case, we have to use some handlers. Right? As the name suggests, handlers, that means they are going to handle something. And what they are going to handle? They are going to handle the fulfillment or the rejection of a promise. So what are handlers in this case is, it is basically a then block. What we do is we say that a, whatever that promise is, or you could have simply written dot then here as well if you want. Right? But what we have done right now is we have assigned it into a variable. So we are doing it via a variable here, a dot then. Now this then is going to accept two functions. Right? I'm not saying it is going to accept two callbacks. I'm saying that it is going to accept two functions. The first function will be invoked when the promise will be fulfilled. And the second function that this then block is going to accept will be invoked when the promise is going to be rejected. Okay. Let me repeat again. This then handler is going to accept two functions. The first function will be invoked when the promise is going to be fulfilled, and the second will be invoked when the promise is going to be rejected. Okay, before we do that, I just want to show you one more thing. Let's say if I just make it, 65 back again. What do you expect here? What should be the output in that case?
Same, it should be same.
It should be same. Okay, see. So right now, what we are getting is we are getting this whole lot of error. That is saying that because this promise is rejected and you are not handling the rejection of a promise. So you should be doing that. So this is what it is saying. But you can also see here that this promise is rejected. Right. So I'll just change it back to 75, what it was before. And okay, we have seen the fulfilled state, we have seen the rejected state. So there is one more state that is basically the pending state. So what we can do in order to show you pending state is, okay, what I'll do is I'll simply put this code inside a set timeout block. Sorry. And let's say let's put a timer of 2000 milliseconds. Now, if I'll click on this run button again, then I should be getting the promise in the pending state. So see, I'm getting it in the pending state right now. Yeah, this is how it is going to look. Okay. So again, I just showed you this. I'll remove this set timeout as of now.
Sir, why with that timeout it showed status as a pending one?
Because by the time this statement got executed, the result of the promise was not.
Yes. Yes, sir.
Okay. Yeah. So
But
what
if we if
yeah.
we remove this console.log a, then it won't show that case, no?
Yeah, it won't show. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So yeah, what we were doing is, okay, yeah, we were actually dealing with the handlers. So what I'm going to do right now is I am going to put some handlers in place which can handle the rejection or the fulfillment of the promise. The first argument or the first function that is given to this then handler is basically the function that will be invoked when the promise is going to be fulfilled. Remember this case that the first function is always going to be that. It doesn't matter what arguments that function accepts, it is always going to be the function that will be invoked when the promise is fulfilled. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say function. I'll tell you that what this function accepts. And yeah, this is it. So this function basically accepts a value. And what value? It is going to accept a value that the resolve or the reject function are going to have. Like I just told you a few minutes ago that these resolve and these reject functions, you can basically pass some values here. So whatever value that you will pass here, that would be accepted, or that would be passed on to this data here in this function, and you can make use of this data the way you want. Similarly, we'll apply a comma here, and we'll create one more function for rejection, and same, it is also going to accept something. So I'll say data again. So what I can say here is resolve data, and here I can say is reject data. Okay. Now what will happen is, okay, so we are here. This function is for fulfillment. This function is for the rejection. So for now, I'll just do something very straightforward. I'll say that the promise is rejected, resolved with the value what? With the value data. And here I'm going to write something similar, that the promise is rejected with the value what? With the value reject data, and it is going to be result data. Okay. Are you able to understand this then handler? Right now, what I have written is, inside this then handler, I have written two functions. This is the first function. This is the second function. First function will be invoked when the promise is fulfilled. Second function will be invoked when the promise is rejected. Is there any difficulty so far?
Basically, the promise is having two functions as parameter. So first function, if it is fulfilled, then result data will be coming. And the order of function in promise is also important.
What do you mean by order of promise?
I mean, in new promise function resolve and reject, if we change the order and make it reject and resolve,
yeah,
then,
whatever the first argument is, that is resolved. Doesn't matter what name you give. What's the name that is given?
Yes, so first argument function is going to be checked in the then condition.
Okay, so can you just repeat the last statement once again?
I said, like, if in the promise, if the first the condition is fulfilled and that first function resolve is being returned, then in the then handler, this resolve data will be coming.
Correct. Yeah. Whatever you will pass inside this resolve, that will be given to this resolve data. If you are not if you're not writing anything, that means in that case it is going to be undefined. And yeah, we'll discuss about that case as well, that in case we will reverse these parameters or we'll reverse these functions, then what is going to happen. Just remember that the first is going to be resolved every time the second is going to be rejected in promise as well as in the then handler. The first function is going to deal with the fulfillment. The second function is going to deal with the rejection.
So can we make it the other way around? Is it possible, or this is only we need to follow?
No. This is how it would work.
Okay.
We can have any function first, either resolve or reject. No, you cannot have it like that.
Okay, so always it should be resolve first and then reject.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah.
So basically, then handler is like if this condition is returns true, then do the resolve data. Otherwise, do the reject data.
Correct. Yes.
Kind of if else condition.
Well, I have written it in that way, but what basically matters is to these then handlers is that which function is going to be invoked. Is it resolve or is it reject? I may not have written if at all here. You may have written some levels of for loops, something is happening. And
I'm not saying that if it's condition in promise, I was saying just that then handler is working kind of if else condition. If promise is fulfilled, then do the resolve data, otherwise do the reject data.
Correct. Yes. Okay. So now can you predict what the output is going to be if I'll run this program?
It is rejected.
So the value for resolve data and reject data has not been.
It's not available.
Yeah. So does it going to make any difference?
Yeah, it is coming as undefined.
Yeah, it is coming as undefined. That is okay. But what we want to just understand is that which of the function will get invoked in this case. Is it going to be the first function that is here, or is it going to be the second function that is here?
First function.
So can you show data first? Did you modify? Okay, the first one.
Okay, the first one. Are you sure?
Yes, sir, that satisfies
Yes,
this
sir.
criteria.
Okay, all right. So if you will click on run, yeah, this is what it is printing. That promise is resolved with the value undefined, right? And now if I'll pass some value here, let's say what value we can pass is, let's say we can say division A, right? Now, what you are going to get on the console screen is that the promise is resolved with the value division A, right? Is it okay? And
Yes,
in
sir.
case of reject, what I'm going to say is that less than division A or division first. It should be division first, basically. All right. So if I'll just make certain changes, so English should be greater than 80. I'll just make it 79. And if I click on run, this time the promise should be rejected. And if it is getting rejected, firstly, what will happen is we won't get it like this. We would be getting that rejected kind of keyword here that will show that this promise is now rejected, and accordingly the handler will be invoked, the function will be invoked and will present the output. So here you can see that we are getting this rejected keyword. We are also getting that what the value this promise is rejected with, and after that whatever the handler function is doing, that is getting printed here. So is it okay till now?
Yes, sir.
Here in resolve and reject, we are passing the string
Hmm.
in the promise.
Yep.
But these are functions. So how it is working? We are not defining any function kind of separately.
This will be defined somewhere in the promise class. This will be defined somewhere there, because what we are using is we are using the promise constructor here. So we don't need to worry about it.
So if we write like this entire promise function, then any function name, so it will automatically take it as a function, and in this particular case, we are passing a string to that function. So that string is taken as an argument, and that is explicitly
that is given to these data variables.
So basically, these resolve and reject functions are simply functions which are returning a print statement kind of.
Which are returning a print statement, is it?
I mean, division I and less than.
In that case, yeah. If this function is being called, that is resolved, that means you can say that this promise is resolved or this promise is fulfilled, and you can write whole lot of code, whatever you want to do here. Right now, since we are just understanding that how does this work, so we are just showing as simple as that message on the console screen to understand that how does this work. But in case you are writing some application, if some promise gets resolved, you can even do whatever stuff you want. Right? You can make some fetch calls here, or means so many stuff can be done. This is just a simple example. And the data that you are passing here, that can act as some indicator, right? Because what you can have is you can have multiple resolve functions or multiple resolve calls inside a simple definition. Because let's say there are 5 more conditions. In that case, if the marks in English, if they are greater than 75, you still want this promise to be resolved. But how you want it, or what parameter you want to pass in that resolve is something different. Let's say you want to pass division second in that case. So in that case,
So you
this
can have
function might be defined.
multiple elif conditions and multiple resolve functions, and one reject function in an else condition.
You can even
That
have
was
more
the
reject functions if you want.
Okay, got it.
Okay. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to simplify it a little bit. So right now this is looking so congested here. So what will I do is I'll just take out these definitions and I'll create separate functions of these. So I'll create a new one, let's say resolve handler. And I'm going to copy this. Not actually copy this. I'll just cut it and I'll paste it here. Similarly, I'll create a reject handler. I'm going to do something like this, and here I'll write what it is going to be resolve handler, and it is going to be reject handler. And now if I'll click on run, I should be able to get the same output that I was getting before. So this looks more clean. What I'm doing is that I have defined both of the handlers as different functions, as separate functions, and I'm passing those handlers to this that handler here, so that the code doesn't look too clumsy. Is this okay?
Sir, can you show it again?
Yeah, what I have done is that both of these function definitions, they were previously written inside this then block itself. In case of resolve handler, what was written is what is assigned to this function as of now. That means this value was written in place of resolve handler, and this value was written in place of reject handler. So what we have done is we have just given them some names, and instead of putting the entire function definition here itself, that is going to make the readability of this code a little bit lesser. So what we did is that we just gave them a name and we put that name in place instead of putting the entire definitions. That's it.
Understood, sir.
Okay. Now, instead of this A, let's say I'm going to print some message. Hello world. Can someone tell me that what is going to be the output of this program? What I have done here is I have just written hello world. That's it. Nothing else.
So it will be only hello world. We are not accessing it.
But we are also handling this promise.
Okay.
So this promise is going to be, I guess, rejected if I'm not wrong.
Rejected. Yeah, followed with hello world.
Yeah. So what I want is that what will be the sequence of output on the screen? That's what my question is.
Synchronous one.
Yeah. So can you tell me that what will it be?
First, it will be the rejected value. A promise with rejected value will be printed. On next line, it will print hello world.
Are you sure?
I think so.
Okay. So see, if I click on run button.
I think hello world will be first. Oh,
Yeah,
right.
correct.
Because
so remember that promises were
is
asynchronous.
Yes, yes.
Right. So that's why when the control will reach this statement, this will wait for this promise to either get resolved or to either get rejected, and it will continue with the other synchronous operation.
Yes, sir.
Right. So yeah, we are going to get hello world. Yeah.
Here there is no set timeout or any.
Yeah, but promises are themselves asynchronous.
Itself, it is a asynchronous function.
The moment you use then, it becomes asynchronous. But if you are not using a.then and you are simply trying to print console.log a, then of course that is not asynchronous. For example, if I'll write console.log a, in that case, what I'm going to get is I am going to get first that promise, after that this hello world, and then whatever this promise basically prints, that is promise is rejected with the value this ends. See, first I get promise, then I get hello world, and after that I get this.
Sir, if you don't mind, can you tell me exactly what promise is?
So we discussed it in the beginning of the session itself, that a promise is a proxy for a value that is not known when you are creating. Just try to relate it with your real life. Let's say you or your friend are trying to make a promise. Now, what you can expect, either that promise is going to be fulfilled in the future, or that promise will not be kept, right? These are the only two outcomes.
Yes.
But by the time that promise is not fulfilled or that promise is rejected, there will be a state or there will be a time period in which the promise is going to be kept in a state called pending. That means in that kind, we
Right.
cannot say that whether it is going to be fulfilled going forward or it is going to be rejected. So there are basically 3 states to it. You can just relate it with your real life. It is the same, exactly same. You are just
Right.
creating a proxy of a value that is not known currently.
Uh,
You are
and,
going to get to know about that value in the future. This is what we are doing using them. You are trying to find out the value that promise has resolved into or rejected into.
what is the typical use case for promise?
Whenever you want to make API calls, you would like to use promise.
Okay, and why is that? Okay, the call can get rejected, is it? Okay. Right. Thank you so much, sir.
Okay, all right. So yeah, this is what we have done till now. We have just learned that how to create simple promises, how to basically associate handlers with them, how to handle the fulfillment, how to handle the rejection. And what we have learned is, yeah, this is what we have learned so far. Now, my question is, let's say I don't want to handle the rejection this way, right? I'm just removing this reject handler. Please note it here. I'm removing this reject handler. Can someone tell me that if there is any other way through which I can handle the rejection of a promise?
Using dot catch.
Correct. I can use a catch block as well. A successive catch block to this then block. It is also going to accept the rejection. That means whatever function that you will define in this catch, this is going to be invoked when the promise will be rejected. So let's say what I do is, so since this is going to be rejected, I can define the function here itself. Let's say reject. And this is going to say rejection caught in the catch block with value, whatever it emits. So that is going to be the same. What we have written as parameter here, it is REJ. REJ is going to be that value. So if I click on run, what is the value again that you expect? You will be expecting the exactly same thing, just that this message will change now, since it has been handled using this catch block, and it will show that rejection caught in the catch block with values. So you can see this, that just that value changes, everything else remains the same. What we are doing here is, instead of handling the rejection of that promise within the then block, we are handling it via catch. So this is how the rejection of a promise can also be handled. But there is one more significance for which this catch block is basically used. Does anyone know that why catch block is being used other than handling the rejection? Anyone?
Try catch block was a continuation of the code.
Sorry?
Rather than, not here, but in try catch block, and finally, how it works is like it lets the code continue, entire code continue without creating and making a halt for the entire thing.
Okay, but still I couldn't understand that how it is going to work.
There is some error, then instead of being stuck at that point and making the entire code a halt, it catches that error and let the further code continue.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I got your point. So yes. So basically, whatever happens is, whenever there is an error, in the chain, that the way you are handling this promise, what you are doing is you are first putting a then block, and then you are using a catch block. So let's say while handling the fulfillment of that promise, some error came. While handling the fulfillment of this promise, let's say there is some error that came. Now, how that error is going to resolve? that error will be caught by this catch block. The successive catch block means the catch block that is closest to that error, that will be catching that error and will do whatever is required or whatever is necessary. That means this catch can be used in order to basically catch the rejection of a promise. It can also be used to catch any error. Now, for example, what will I do is I'll intentionally generate an error here. I'll say throw new error, and I'm going to pass the value intentional error. Okay. I just want this promise to be fulfilled in this case. So marks should be 82. Mathematics, it should be, okay, it doesn't matter. Computer, it should be greater than 70. Physics should be greater than 80. All right. Now, in this case, you know that this promise is going to be resolved, right? Because this condition is going to be satisfied. Am I correct?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Now, what you will see here is that both this function and this catch, both of these are going to be executed. See, if I click on run, one second. Okay, sorry, I pasted it in the rejection handler. I should have done it in resolve handler here. So now if I click on run, rejection caught in the catch block with error. Okay, correct. So now, please don't misunderstood as an error. This is basically something that we are printing here, intention. Okay, so let me try to make you understand that what is happening here. When this program starts executing, firstly, all of the synchronous things will, finish their execution. So firstly, this thing, this console.log A. So A is a promise. This shows that this promise is resolved, right? With value division 1. This is what it shows. The next thing it shows is this value called hello world. This is again a synchronous code, so that will be executed. Now, what will happen is that this promise will start its execution. So, of course, in the promise, you will see that this promise is going to be resolved with the value division 1. So what will happen is it will go into resolve handler. And what this resolve handler does is it prints the value promise is resolved with the value, whatever it gets. So it says promise is resolved with the value that it gets, that is division 1. After printing this value, what this function does is it automatically generates an error. It explicitly generates an error that says, that error says that it is intentional error. Now, since there is an error in this chain, the way you are handling the promise rejection or the fulfillment, this is basically a complete chain that you are creating here. Because firstly, then will be executed, then the control will go into catch if required. But the control to catch won't go if it is not required. For example, if there is no error, or of course, if there is no rejection of the promise, then it won't go. So the moment this error is generated, it automatically goes to what? It automatically goes to catch. And after that, what happens is it prints this value, that is rejection caught in the catch block with value. Rejection caught in the catch block with value. And whatever value it is printing here, this is basically due to this reject. Since we passed a value here, intentional error, it is coming due to that. If you just want that message to be displayed that you passed as a string to this error constructor, what you can do is you can simply say reject.message. So this is just going to show you the message that you have passed here as an argument. So now if you will click run again, you won't see this, at resolve handler, etc., etc. You will just see intentional error. So you are just getting with value intentional error. That's it. So are you getting how this is working? How the control is shifting to block to block?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay, great.
So can you just repeat again?
So, okay. What we have to understand here is that how the control flow is working for this program. Firstly, what will happen is that all of the synchronous code will get executed. What is the synchronous code here? These two lines. So due to line number 27, this is being shown. Due to line number 28, this hello world message is being shown. These are the first two lines that were executing synchronous. Now, it's the turn for the asynchronous code. And what is asynchronous code in our program? That is the promise handlers. So this is how we are handling this promise using these chains. What we are doing is in the then, you know that you can basically pass two functions in the then handler. One is resolve handler, one is reject handler. But right now what we are doing is we are just passing one handler. If we are passing one handler, that is going to be treated as a resolve handler. It's not going to be treated as reject handler if there is just one function.
In case we pass reject handler, so what will it will?
It's
throw
just
an
the
error,
name.
right?
It's just the name. No.
Okay.
It's just the name that you have to define. You can even write reject handler here, but still it is going to be invoked when this promise gets resolved. So it doesn't matter what name you write here. You have to understand that how the flow works. If the promise resolves and there is just one function in the then handler, that function is going to be. If there is just one handler in this then block and the promise is rejected, that means then is not going to take care of that. If there is a catch block that is taking care of that, it is okay. But if there is no catch as well, you are going to get an error that there is an unhandled promise. For example, if I just remove this catch from here and I'll just comment out this statement and I'll make the English marks, let's say 78 again. What is going to happen is this promise is going to be rejected because this condition won't be satisfied. We will be calling the reject callback here. Since we are calling reject callback here, in the then we are just passing one that is going to just handle the fulfillment of. So it is going to generate an error that there is an unhandled promise. It is saying that there is an unhandled promise rejection. Right? Okay. Even if I change it to, reject, I'll just comment it out and I'll make this reject. Still, the output remains the same. Don't think that if the name suggests reject handler, that means it is going to take care of the rejection of that promise. That's not correct. You have to understand that why this is in place.
Okay, yeah.
So I'll just get it back the way it was. Okay. All right. Yeah, it was also. Okay. Have you understood this? How the control flow works? How the control flow goes?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Please take care of these things. That doesn't matter what naming convention we use. You have to understand that when this function or this callback is going to be invoked, this is what is going to matter. Because in the exam, you can encounter a question where it says reject handler. And by name, if you go with that behavior that is going to handle the rejection, you are going to definitely select the wrong option. Okay. So yeah, just take care of these things. All right. Now, the other thing that I want to touch upon is, like, I said that there is basically a chain, an entire chain that we are maintaining. Right now, what is there? Sorry?
Could you please scroll up a little?
Yeah.
Resolve language. Just a second.
Yeah. Is there any doubt?
Promise? In the promise, we are not right. This variable resolve handler is a function. We resolve data. And,
okay.
And in the promise, we are simply having resolve and reject.
Okay.
So, but that resolve and reject is not coming anywhere. I mean, the name resolve and reject is not coming anywhere in the variables defined. So, is there any significance in the order of the variable created also? Like if we create const reject handler first and const resolve handler next to that.
Okay.
So will that alter the dot then resolve function or the reject function?
Okay, so what you are saying here is, let's say if I write
No.
Here.
Not this. Here resolve handler, it's taking like a we defined const resolve handler first before the const reject handler.
Okay, yeah.
So these are two separate variables we could define anywhere, correct?
Yeah, of course. You could define reject handler even before line number 16, not going to matter. This is what you are asking, that if you just reverse the positioning of these resolve handler and
Yes.
this reject handler, yeah, it is not going to
Yes.
matter. As I said, these are just the variable names that are given to this definition, this function definition. Doesn't matter in what sequence you define them. The what matters is that where you are invoking, where you are using.
Correct. So how it is? So if like you showed that if we are using a dot then reject handler,
Hmm.
then also it is going to throw an error.
So if I'm saying that a dot 10, just forget about this name here. This name doesn't matter at all. If there is a single function given here in this then block, then that function is going to be invoked when the promise is fulfilled. Now, doesn't matter what the name is. It can be resolved, it can be reject, it can be any other name in the book. The name is not going to matter. What matters is that if there is a single function here, if there are two functions, this is completely fine. That means you are going to handle the rejection.
Correct.
You are going to handle the
exactly. So what I was saying, so if we have defined const reject handler as something which is invoked when promise is rejected, but if we invoke it over here instead of resolve, we are invoking reject handler. Then even though promise is fulfilled, the message will be
definition.
Will be
this definition will
rejection.
Correct. Yeah. The promise is getting.
We need to be careful in that.
Exactly.
We need to be careful in everything what we are writing.
Exactly. That's what I'm emphasizing here, that you have to understand the functionality, the control flow. That whatever you write here, this has its own significance. The naming convention should not confuse you in any case.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to, play a little bit more with the chains that we are basically creating. So what I said is that this is a then block and this is a catch. So right now there is just one then and just one catch in this entire chain that is going to handle this promise. But what basically happens is that we can have multiple thens, we can have multiple catches as well. Let me just try to show you an example. So let me just see that. So I have commented this out. Okay, so see, I'm trying to make the code a little bit more readable. So that's why I'm putting it in the different lines as much as possible. Let me see if I can do something with this as well. I think this is fine. So see, what I have done here is a.then resolve handler. That means when the promise gets resolved, this function is what is going to be invoked. And if it is invoked, so whatever value it returns, that will be given as a parameter to this then. For example, if you look at this resolve handler, what is the definition of it? The definition of it is here. What this function is doing, this is also a function. This is accepting one variable called resolve data. What is coming in resolve data? Whatever you are passing as an argument to the resolve callback in your promise definition. This is what is going to be received here in this variable. Similarly, whatever this function is going to return, that will be passed on to the variable that you can use here. For example, similarly, I can create a function. Let's say some value. I can simply write value. And I can make use of this value. I can say that value received from the previous then. Please note down the message as well that I'm using here. What I'm saying is that value received from the previous then. Since it is a then, if it is going to get a value from this then, that will be passed on to this value variable, and I am going to print this value as it is. The very first thing that I want to understand from all of you is, or that I want to know from all of you is, that if you look at the definition of this resolve handler function, let me just go on to that. So it is the definition. And what we are saying is that the next block that we are defining in that chain, the variable there is going to get the value that this function is going to return. Can someone tell me that what this function is returning?
Division 1.
Sorry?
So the resolve handler.
Resolve underscore
Yeah,
data.
resolve handler.
It will be giving us the sentence promises resolve with the value and then resolve.
What this function is returning, this is what I'm saying. The highlighted portion, this is a function definition. What this function returns?
Object.
It should return a promise.
No. If you will call this function, what is the value that this function will return?
The sentence promise is resolved with the value and
this
then
is going to print that value. It is not going to return this value.
Okay, it won't return the full line.
Okay, so see, what generally happens is that it returns, or you basically return some value at the end of that function definition. For example, if you write something like return 5 or return some value, let's say hello. So this is what this function is going to return, right? Just like in other programming languages, in Python, in C++, in Java, that you would have used or that you would have seen so far. It's a simple question that what this function is returning. If I keep a keyword return explicitly here, everyone knows that this function is returning a value hello. That means if I call this function and I assign the result in a variable, and after that I print that variable, what that variable is going to print. Of course, that is not going to print whatever is written here, because if you are calling this function, this will be shown on the console, and the return value of this function is going to be assigned to the variable, not what is going to be shown on this. So if I write this return statement explicitly, it is very much clear to everyone that it is returning hello. But what I'm saying is that if I just comment out this statement, now what this function is returning.
I think it should return an object.
Object of what type?
I'm not sure what type, but it should return an object.
Okay, let me just open a simple JavaScript compiler here. I create a simple function and I'll show that what does it return. So let's say I create a function, let's say ABC, and what this does is this again just write nothing meaningful on the screen, and what I'm doing is I'm saying that const a equals to ABC console.log. So this was what my question was. This is what my question was. You have a function. This function is doing something, and what you are doing is you are calling that function and you are assigning the return value of it to a variable, and you are printing that value. What do you expect the value? So one response that I got was an object. Is there any other response that you can think of? So see, we are going to get undefined. Right? The last value is what? Undefined. So if this function is not returning anything explicitly, what this is going to return is undefined. Similarly, if we talk about this resolve handler, if I am not writing this return statement explicitly here, what do you expect this function to return? This is going to return what? Simply undefined, the same the same case that we just saw a few seconds ago. So what I'm saying here is that this function, it is going to get the value that is returned by the previous then. And what this previous then returns, you have to look at the definition of this resolve handler. Since it is not returning anything explicitly, you have to assume it to be undefined. That means this value that we have defined, newly here, recently here, this is going to be, assigned with undefined. So what will happen is I'll just, comment out these two lines. So right now, we won't get these two lines on the output next time. What we want to see is that how this chain is working. So the very first thing is that if this promise gets resolved, I'm assuming this promise to be resolved, 80, 72, This doesn't matter. 82, 7. Yeah, this promise is going to be resolved. Since it will be resolved, this resolve handler will be called. This resolve handler will do what? It is going to print some value on the screen with some value that it gets from that promise, that is division 1. It will print it as it is on the screen. After that, this function will return some value. See, every function is going to return some value. It doesn't matter, be it undefined or anything else. Everything will return. Okay. So the value that it returns will be received by this value or by this function. And we are going to do something with that value. What we are doing is we are right now simply dumping it on the screen. So let's see. What the output is going to be, I have already explained that this resolve handler will be called. According to this, you will get promise is resolved with the value division 1. And after that, the value it returns is undefined. This value will be passed to this value variable here. I think this is making a confusion. So I'll just make, say, V. That's it. After printing that value or that sentence, that promise is resolved with the value division 1, this is the value or this is the string that will be printed on the screen. That is value received from the previous 10. That is going to be undefined. Do you think the catch should be invoked? What do you all think? Should the catch block be invoked here or not?
No.
No, sir.
It should not be, because we are not dealing with any rejection of a promise here. We are not dealing with any error here. So there is no meaning of catch block being invoked. So if I click on run, I'll just get 2 statements on my output screen. So these are the 2 statements. Promise is resolved with the value division 1. Value received from the promise then, from the previous then, is what? Undefined. This is what we decided previously, that it is going to be undefined. Now, if I explicitly make it to return a value called hello, then this undefined is going to change to what? It is going to change to hello. Right? It gets changed to hello. Did you get my point?
Yes, sir.
Similarly, what you can do is you can create a long chain here. That means you can have tens of then blocks. You can have as many as catch blocks as you want. You can even have finally block. This is also one type of block that doesn't really accept any value or returns any value. Okay, let me just discuss one more example here. Now, what I have done is I have let's say commented out this return statement, and I have uncommented this. Throw new error. This is the statement that I have uncommented right now. What do you think? What the output will be now? And which of the things will get invoked? Which then, and which, or whether catch will be invoked or not?
So promise resolved with the catch block.
Is this the entire output? Sorry, can you just repeat it once again? I thought you were just spilling the control.
Promise resolve that statement, and as we are throwing error over there, it should directly come to catch. I think so.
Okay, so it should directly come to catch, and it should show rejection caught in the catch block with value rej.message, right?
Yeah, maybe.
So that means this then won't have any effect. The one that we recently added, this one.
Yeah, I think so. Not sure.
Does anyone has a different opinion, or every one of you feels the same?
Could you please scroll up a little bit?
Yeah, sure.
And as error has occurred, it should catch the error.
Okay. Yeah, we'll see what happens.
Yes, I mean the return tab here also is like there's no return, so
Yeah.
undefined kind of situation is still seems to be valid here.
Okay.
So it is giving 2 things. One is like resolve promise, and then we are having subsequent then function v. So there it will have a undefined thing, and then also we are having throwing error after that. Then it will catch the error in the catch block.
So according to you, the output will be firstly this promise is resolved with the value division 1. After that, value received from the previous then is undefined, and then rejection caught in the catch block. Is it?
Looks like yes.
Okay. So yeah, there is a slight change. What Chandrasekhar said was correct. There will be only two things which will get executed. First is this then block, this resolve handler that will say that the promise is resolved with the value division 1, and second is going to be catch. The logic that he gave was also absolutely correct, because what is going to happen is the moment control reaches here, throw new error, it will say, okay, the error has now been generated. Since the error has been generated, it is not going to go into then, because then cannot take care of an error. Which can take care of an error is a catch block. So the control will directly go to the catch block and will do whatever stuff is required. So even if you try to return some value here, let's say return hello, you can say that this is an
That
unreachable
return
code.
will not be reached.
Yes, correct. Even the comment can, you can see the comment that is unreachable, because after this error occurs, the control is not going to return back. The controller gets to hear catch, and if there is anything after that catch, that is what going to be executed. The control will never return back to this function definition once again. It doesn't matter how many lines of code you add.
So in this case, if we don't have this, if anyway we are not writing return, then the return type of the function being undefined doesn't come into picture.
Yes, correct. The moment it sees an error, it has to look for something that can take care of an error. So either it is going to be catch or it is going to be a finally block that can handle an error. Then cannot take care of an error in any sense.
So then what will be the return type of the function if we are
It's
throwing
not
an
going to be
error
return
through the
type.
function?
It's not going to be return type. If let's say you make or generate an error here, so new error, it will directly say that there is an error and the function won't proceed, or the program won't proceed with the further execution. See, it says there is an error and it won't proceed further. Okay.
So basically, if there is any error, then there is no question of any value being returned. It's simply goes, I mean,
Until and
goes
unless
like
you are
a,
not handling that error. Let's say I put a try catch block here. Of course, if there is no return statement explicitly, you can expect it to be undefined. For example, I say try I am not sure if we use the try catch in the similar way. Do we basically provide any arguments? I'm not sure again. So let's say I'll write some meaningful message that error is caught, something like that. So if I'll click on run, yeah, ultimately, okay, it works. So what happens is that you handle that error and you say that error is caught. So since everything is working fine, this function will return undefined. This is what you are going to get it.
so in this case, both the then block will work.
Both the
If we
then
are
block.
right. Yes.
If we will write it this way, yeah, correct. If you apply a try catch here itself, of course, it is going to work. But well, that's the whole purpose of applying catches here, that you don't generally, put a try catch here. So you will generally rely on catch blocks or the finally blocks in order to get rid of that errors or those errors.
Okay.
Okay, all right. Okay, just one more thing. Let's say if I'll apply one more level, I'll say then let's say D. I'm going to make an arrow function now. Not going to create a normal function or a reverse function. What is it is going to say is that last 10 in the chain. And what it is printing here is D. What do you think? What the output should be? I hope I have made the required changes. Catch. Yeah. Can you predict the output?
So what is the data?
Yeah.
Marks?
So again, it is going to get it from the last call. You're talking about this D, right?
No, sir, I'm talking about what are the marks given on top? Oh, sorry, can you scroll a bit up?
Okay. That,
I just wanted to see this. Okay. So then statement should execute with promise only after the promise. And here we are writing after catch. I don't think it is going to get executed. I'm not sure.
okay. Anyone else?
No, we are throwing the error, correct?
Wait. Let me check. Yeah, we are still throwing the error.
No, but then I'm not sure because any value is not being returned.
Okay, so see, if I click on run, I am getting this last then in the chain,
Last then in the chain, okay.
right?
So does that
So,
mean, sir, then is not dependent on any promise statement? We can use it anywhere?
yeah, of course, that's what I'm trying to explain, that there is a complete or there is a long chain that you can basically create here. Every then is going to
Okay.
rely on the output of the previous call or the previous statement, whatever it was, whether it was then or catch.
Yeah,
It is going to get it.
whatever be there in before, whether it is a then or anything else, just it will take that output and it will proceed with it.
Correct. Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
This is how the chain is going to function. So now, if what will I do is,
So because rejection function was returning undefined, that is what it is catching in the last.
since reject.
Then block.
Sorry. Can you repeat again?
In the catch, we got the rejection message, correct?
Yeah, that's what I'm going to do here is, I'm going to return some value from this catch block explicitly, let's say 5. So now I'm going to get 5. So this is just to show you that the value that it is getting from is the last block, whatever it was, whether be it then or be it catch. Okay, it is not going to the value that the previous then has returned. If the previous block that got executed is catch, it is going to be catch. That will give or where it is going to get the value from.
So it's kind of sequential.
Correct. So yeah, this is how you can generate this entire chain. You can apply as many as thens, you can apply as many as catch. The reason for doing so is that it is quite possible that while handling the promise or while handling the fulfillment of promise, you wrote some code which can generate an error itself. So that error can be caught in the catch block, and maybe the code that you write in the catch block that itself can generate an error that can be caught by another catch block that is there in the sequence. So whenever there is an error, it is going to skip all of the then blocks. Can you note down the statement that whenever there is an error, it is going to skip all of the then statements. It is going, the control will go to the earliest catch call or the catch block. For example, after this catch, if there are 10 thens and after those 10 thens, there is one catch. So if there is an error that you are generating or that unfortunately got generated here in this catch block, all of the next 10 blocks won't, 10 blocks, next 10 then blocks won't be executed. It will be the catch block that will be executed if this catch block resulted in an error. Okay, as we have already discussed that then cannot take care of the error.
And
So
sir,
just
we can
as
have
a
only one finally block.
Sorry?
We can have only one finally block.
No, you can have as many as finally blocks. But it is recommended to have one, but of course, it's up to you, the program, you are the programmer, you can write this.
so just as a doubt, I just wanted to know, as we are cascading then on then in series, can we cascade catch in same fashion?
Yeah, of course, that's what I discussed.
Catch.
That's what I discussed.
Catch after the catch. Immediately after that, is it?
Yeah, sure, you can do that. Yes.
And sir, one more thing. What is now we used here in last statement the normal function and the arrow function. Is there any significance or difference between these two of using particularly in case of this resolve and reject?
See, I guess I have tried to use normal functions as much as possible, but
Yeah.
what I generally do is I generally use arrow functions in all of the promise cases. But just
Yes,
to
sir.
explain you better, because it is easier for you to understand with the normal functions. So that's why I try to use normal functions as much as possible. But
As
it's
in
completely fine. Yeah.
video lecture, arrow function were only used. That's why I'm asking.
Yeah, correct.
Even in many.
Even I generally use arrow functions, but specifically for this lecture, so that it becomes easier for you to understand with the normal functions, I went with this. Otherwise, I would have used arrow functions.
Yes,
And
sir.
arrow
Clear.
functions, using arrow functions here makes sense because this is the function that you are not going to use anywhere else. This is also an anonymous function.
Yes, sir. Yes, clear, sir. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So what will I do is I'll quickly comment out this entire code. And there is one more thing that I just want to touch upon. That is the async functions. Okay. Well, is there anything that someone can tell about async functions, how they are different from the normal functions? What is the advantage of using them? Is there anything else that makes them different from the normal function? Has anyone started using them?
Not yet, sir.
Okay.
So those are asynchronous functions.
Those are asynchronous functions, but how can you say that?
Yes, we can await on the response of that. Another function can be made stop unless the first function is generating the output. That dependency we can generate.
Correct. Okay. All right. So what will I do is I'll first start with a simple thing, simple async function, and we'll show you that how is it different from a normal function. Async function ABC, and what this is going to do is print a simple statement. Console.log. Okay. Now, what do you think if I'll execute this program? What is going to happen? I have commented all of the other previous. So line number 36 and 40 is what we are looking. But probably what I should do is I should do it this way. Okay, so this is going to print this value. Or instead, what I can do is I can instead return. What do you think? What's going to be the output now? It is going to be async function, right?
Async function, yeah.
Async functions.
Now, if I'll just add async here, what are the changes that you expect in the output? So the
So
thing to
where
note
will-
here is that
where
whenever,
will you-
sorry,
where will you be adding the async function?
I have added async here.
No, when you ask the question.
Sorry, I didn't get it.
Now you said now that async function, when we add async function in here.
No,
So
what I said is when we set async keyword. So the moment you apply async keyword here, it becomes an async function.
Okay.
Async is not a function in itself, it's a keyword. And whenever you apply this keyword with a function, that means you can use a keyword, one more special keyword called await inside that function definition. Otherwise, using that keyword outside any async function is not allowed. It is going to generate an error. Now, this function can make use of await keyword if needed. Otherwise, no. So yeah. So this is one more thing, that whenever a function becomes async, what you get is you can use that await keyword in the function definition, and you can make things wait before the next set of code can get executed. We are just going to see one example of that going forward in this session itself. But right now, the other difference that it makes is that whenever a function is async, it is always going to return a promise no matter what. It is always going to return a promise. So see, if I will click on run, you are not going to get async function as the output. You are going to get a promise. See, a promise that resolves with value async function. So this is the difference that it makes, or that it brings in an async function. Whenever you apply this async keyword in front of a function, okay, it is always going to return a promise. But if you will see a normal function, it is just going to return that value as it is, that will be shown on the console right now. Okay. So there are two things that it is going to return a promise. The other is that you can make use of a special keyword called await. Can someone tell me that what is the usage of keyword await?
This is make to wait till the data is available from the previous one.
Okay, let's say I say await and I say statement one here. Don't focus that I'm making any syntax error. I'm just trying to understand what your understanding is. What do you think how this function is going to work? Or let's say I write one more statement here. How this program is going to work? Can you tell me?
First statement 4 will be executed. It's outside the
Or instead, let's
function.
not make it console.log. Let's say, yeah.
So first statement 4 will be executed.
Okay.
Because it's a synchronous one.
Sir,
Yeah.
await cannot await the statement, right? It has to await the functions.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, that don't focus on the syntax error that I'm making here. Just try to understand the logical part. Let's say if there is something that is written here, then what will be the control and what sequence the output will be shown on the console.
So statement 1 is also a async function, right?
I don't know.
That's
I have
what
not
you-
defined anything right now.
Okay, so what I'm saying is if statement 1 is not async function, then I think it should give an error here.
Okay. And okay, let's say the program executes very well without generating any error. What do you think what the sequence of statements should be in the output screen?
Sir, it should be statement 4, statement 2, 3, and then the return function. And whenever
What about
the
one? What about
await, whenever the await function is resolved, maybe it is. If is there a timeout, sir? Here?
Oh, right now I'm saying that this is very generic. I am not defining anything.
Oh, okay.
Sir, I think it will be straightforward. Statement 1, statement 2, statement 3, and statement 4.
Okay. Okay, there is one more thing that I can state here is that this statement 4 is a console.log statement. And what it is printing is, this is printing hello. Now, what do you think? So I forgot to mention this part in the beginning, that this is a console.log state, a simple state. Now, what the sequence of output will be?
वो points मुझे भेजना बाकी है ना आपको?
Hello will
someone's
come
speaking
first.
something?
No, I think hello will be the last.
Statement 1 will be the last.
Okay, statement 1 will be the last. Any other opinions?
So
No, sir, statement 1 cannot be the last.
And then 3.
Okay,
Statement 1
so I would
cannot
request
be
you
the
to
last
speak.
because
Yeah, sorry.
statement 1 cannot be the last. It has to be first because as soon as ABC function is called, it is going to await for the statement 1.
Okay.
Okay. Then when the statement 1 completes and executes completely, then the statement 2 will execute it, then statement 3 will be executed. Then after that, the hello will be executed.
Okay, all right. Does anyone has a different opinion than Neeraj? Yeah. Yeah, go ahead, please.
First hello will be printed.
Sorry, first.
Then statement hello.
Okay, first hello will be printed,
Then statement 1, 2, and then 3.
okay, this is another sequence. Anyone else with a different opinion or who want to support?
Sir, first hello, then a statement 2, 3, and then a statement 1.
All right. Anyone else?
So I think statement 2, 3, hello, and then 1.
2, 3, hello, and then 1. Okay. Okay, all right. Now, what will I do is, instead of telling you the answer right away, I would like to make this code something very specific so that you can even understand what is happening. Let's say what we can do here is, let's create a promise that is just having this resolve. So yeah, this is a complete example in front of you. So according to the responses that I got before, what are the possibilities that are there? Statement 1, 2, 3, 4 is going to be the output. The other sequence was statement 4, 1, 2, 3. This is one type of sequence. The other output was 2, 3, 1, 4 is the other sequence. Other than that, statement 4, 2, 3, 1 is the other sequence. So, okay, these were the type of responses that we initially got. Now, since you have the entire example in front of you, what do you think now what the sequence would be? Or
4, 1, 2, 3. Sir.
I'm not resolving this promise. I forgot to do so. So let me just resolve this promise. Yeah. So 1, 2, 3, 4 is what I heard just now. Anything else from anyone else?
4, 1, 2, 3.
4, 1, 2, 3.
Yes, sir.
4, 1, 2, 3. Okay, is the another thing? All right. Anything else? One, 2, 3, 4 and 4, 1, 2, 3 are the two sequences that I have gotten so far with this example. Anyone else?
Two, 3, 4, 1.
2, 3, 4, 1. Okay.
So 4 will come first.
Okay, 4 will come first. What about the others? What about the other statements?
I think up to statement 1, 2, 3 will execute. Not sure.
So
As
I also,
async await is there now, so that should be first the dependency resolved and then it will proceed.
Okay, so let me tell you the answer here should be 4, 1, 2, 3. Firstly, this console.log statement will be executed, and after that, these all statements will be executed.
So it will always first resolve dependency. That's true, sir.
What do you mean by resolve dependency?
Like here, async we have written and await is awaiting till that async is means
We'll discuss
that
that.
statement
We'll
one
discuss
gets so okay.
I'll discuss that. Right.
Okay.
So if I click on run, so see what I'm getting is statement 4, and after waiting for 2 seconds, what I got was statement 1, 2. So Whoever has
Sir, can I
given
explain
this
this?
sequence to be the answer. Sorry.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Me.
Whoever has given this sequence to be the answer, can one of them please unmute themselves and try to explain what is the logic behind this sequence?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Sir, the async function is an asynchronous function. So first the synchronous will execute and statement 4 will get printed. And then we go to async function ABC. Await keyword will wait until the promise is get resolved. So we wait for 2 seconds and the promise will get resolved and statement 1 will get printed. After that, 2 and 3 statement will get printed.
Okay. Okay, I'll just make a small change here, a very small change. I'll just remove this await keyword. Now, what do you think? Will there be any effect on the output?
Yes, sir.
What will it be now?
So I think it should be now statement 4, 2, 3, and then 1.
It should be 4, 2, 3, and 1. Are you sure?
I think so.
It's 2, 3, 4, 1.
Okay. So the function, like it will go in order execution.
So yeah, let us first start our explanation from this example. After that, we'll put await and see what happens. Okay. So see, just take it as a normal example and see how Promise works and how JavaScript works, how JavaScript execute codes. Whenever there is any asynchronous dependency, what it does is it doesn't wait for that to execute or to finish its execution. It just simply goes ahead with the other execution that it has. So when this function will be invoked, the control will get inside this function, will get into this function, and it will see that there is one promise. And since promise works asynchronously, it is not going to spend time resolving this promise right now. What will it do is it will say, okay, I'll come on to that, or I'll execute this whenever this promise gets resolved. What will it do is it will say, I am going to execute the other remaining code. You just keep executing and let me know whenever you are done. So what will it do is it will first print statement 2 or execute statement 2. It will execute statement 3. After that, it will check that is that completed? Is the execution completed? No, not yet. What will it do is it will also check that are there any other statements remaining in the program after this function call. So it will see, yes, there is one more statement that is still remaining here. That is statement 4. Now, after executing the statement 4, it doesn't have any other choice to wait for it to complete. It will sit idle and it will wait for this promise to get resolved or to get rejected and do whatever it wants. And once this promise gets resolved, when will it resolve? It will resolve after waiting for 2000 milliseconds or 2 seconds. Once it resolves, it is going to print this statement on the console, and after that, it will be resolved. So this is how the normal function execution will look like, and this is what we have studied so far. There is nothing different. I hope you all agree with that, right? This is the normal control flow that we have seen so far. The moment we introduce the keyword await, what it does is it restricts the execution of next set of statements that are written after this statement. Now, if I can just maximize this and can show you that what is this entire statement. So await is applied to what? Await is applied to this statement, that is new promise, and this new promise is basically till line number 40. So what this await keyword is going to do here, it will make sure that this entire statement gets executed. Only after that, the control will go to line number 40. Otherwise, the control will not move forward within this function only. Remember, or kindly note this statement, only within this function. That means if this is an asynchronous call, the next statements have to wait for it to complete. But meanwhile, JavaScript is not going to wait. What will JavaScript do is it is going to execute the other things, the other synchronous code that is written in the program. So it started from this function call. After that, it cannot move because this is a await keyword, and this is enforcing the JavaScript to wait here before proceeding executing further statements in this function definition. But what will it do is it will execute the other statements that are there in the program. So it will move outside this function call and will see that what all statements are there. So the very first thing it will do is it will execute this statement. that is statement 4. Once the statement 4 is executed, JavaScript has nothing to do in the remaining program. So what it has to do is it has to wait for this statement to finish its execution. The moment it finishes its execution, after waiting for 2000 milliseconds, it will finish. It will print this statement 1 on the screen, and after that, it will proceed with the rest of the code that is written inside that function definition. So that is why if we apply the keyword await, the output is going to be what? The output is going to be statement 4, 1, 2, 3. This is the previous output, 2, 3, 4. If I'll run this program once again, the output that we should get here is 4, 1, 2. And after waiting for 2 seconds, the statement 1, 2, 3 will be printed. So if I'll click on run again, you see statement 4 comes right away. After waiting for 2 seconds, statement 1, 2, 3 will come.
Sir, I have a doubt here.
Yeah.
As here, the promise is waiting for 2 seconds. Now, suppose after line number 46, I have plenty of statements, those who are synchronous one, and those are within 2 seconds. Means that take time more than 2 seconds to execute.
How can you say that they will take more time?
No. Let's assume the scenario. I'm saying that a sufficient number of synchronous statements are there, and in between this, await function is going to get the promise.
You have to understand the fact that JavaScript is basically single-threaded in itself, so it can only work on one thing. So the time it is executing this synchronous code, it will keep on executing this code, and once that synchronous code has finished, then only it will come back.
Okay, then whatever be the promises is not in 2 seconds or 5 seconds, that is not going to matter.
Yes.
Okay.
I am able to see one message in the chat. 6 p.m. There is another session. So yeah, please go ahead with the other session. I'm sorry if there was any other session. Okay. So yeah, this is basically a simple introduction to async and await. The entire purpose of using await is we will be using it extensively using fetch calls, because what we want is, let's say this new promise is a fetch call here. Just assume that. And in the next statements, what we are doing is you are assigning the data that you have get from fetch call to some, let's say to some, some HTML elements. Let's say there is some variable that you declared A, and there is some number that you are supposed to get using fetch call. And what you are doing in these statements is you are doing something like document dot get element by ID, and once you get that element, you set the inner HTML of that element to what? To this A. Now you don't want this statement to be executed before you actually get the data in this variable A, because in this fetch call you might be trying to change the value of this A. So what you want is you want this statement to complete its execution first before this statement gets executed. So this is exactly the purpose where we use await keyword, right? To restrict the execution of the other statements in the code if there is some dependency. So of course there is direct dependency. You should not be updating an inner HTML property of an element if you are not certain about the value. So you should wait for that statement to finish its execution. Then only you should do that. Is that okay?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
All right. So I guess I am done with pretty much whatever I thought to be covering in this session. So please let me know if you guys have any queries, any questions.
So basically await being within an async function, so within that function, whatever next code lines are there, that will be kept awaiting.
That will be kept.
And anything beyond that function will keep on executing.
Yes, it's only the function definition or the set of code that is written inside that function definition that has to wait. The other program need not wait. It will continue its execution in meanwhile.
Sir, is it must to define function in the format function keyword followed by the name of the function, or we can directly go with async and name of the function? Can I just drop this function keyword?
I don't think so. It will work. It has straight away given an error, so that won't work.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So in the next session, we will start with the fetch API. Since we have discussed about promises in very much details, I don't think you guys will be having any problems in understanding how the fetch API works. There will be 2 chains of them that we'll be using there. So yeah, in the next session, we will make use of fetch APIs and see that how can we fetch data and can use that in a web page accordingly and can customize. Okay, all right. So I have stopped sharing my screen.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for the session.
Okay. All right. So I hope there are no more questions. And all right, if there are no more questions, I guess it's a good time to wind up this session. Right? So once again, thank you everyone for joining with us, and we'll see you in the next session. Have a good day. Bye.
Thank you, sir.